one of the questions I wanted to answer was, what is the purpose of menopause? And what I know from all the research I've done is that the body doesn't do anything by mistake. Your brain is rewiring itself for leadership.
Okay, now I can't talk to you without asking about fasting.
There's been a lot of rhetoric right now that menopausal women shouldn't fast. And I believe 180-degree opposite of that.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Lisa Jadan. Thank you for being part of our beautiful MenoPositive community, and well done you for taking this moment for yourself today. If you've been listening for a while, you'll know I describe menopause as a totally normal biological experience. But normal doesn't have to mean unpleasant. And I am here, together with you, discovering all the ways we can become the healthiest, most powerful version of ourselves. Wherever you are on your journey, today's episode is a banger because I'm joined by the incredible Dr. Mindy Pelz, who first came on my radar through a mutual friend who said, "You need to meet Dr. Mindy. She matches your energy." She's a New York Times bestselling author, educator, and one of the most influential voices in women's health. You might know her from her books Fast Like a Girl, The Menopause Reset, Eat Like a Girl, and her newest book, Age Like a Girl, is completely changing the way we think about aging as women. We're going to talk about how the menopause transition can be a launchpad for leadership and reinvention. Dr. Mindy will share the 3 hormonal transitions women move through and how we can fuel our menopause brain and take advantage of its new wiring, which I find fascinating. Have you heard of the grandmother hypothesis? Well, you will today. I'm also going to ask Dr. Mindy which lifestyle practices she believes makes the biggest difference. And of course, we're going to have to ask her about fasting and menopause. But before we begin, if this is already resonating, please do share this with one woman in your life who might need it right now, or just take a moment to follow the show so these conversations can keep finding you. But now, Dr. Mindy, I am so delighted to welcome you and your energy to MenoPositive.
Thank you. Well, first I have to say, I love the title of your podcast. Let's start there.
Thank you so much. It's all in the name, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all in the name. I'm living proof of that. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I just thought, I really believe that women are looking for a bright light. They are looking, society and culture has told us that here's a hole we're going to find ourselves in, and this is the doom and gloom. And I think there are so many things that women can do to have a more positive transition and feel great about themselves. So I'm so excited to get started, but I wanted to ask you your ambition for this book, because I did notice you dedicated it to your authentic voice. And I only call it out because in your other books, you've dedicated them to other people. So I just wanted to know what was behind that.
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking me that. I left little nuggets throughout the book, like where to myself and meaningful things. And nobody's ever asked me about the dedication. I spent a lot of time thinking about it. So this book has really been a 10-year research project. And it started in my clinic when I noticed all these women coming in their mid-40s and late 40s. And they had very similar complaints. It was, I'm not motivated. I'm waking up depressed. I'm suicidal. I can't focus. And it was and my practice was built in Silicon Valley, where we had really high achieving families, and everybody was on the go doing 20 million things. And I just couldn't believe that these women were expressing such discontent in their life. And so I was trying to understand what was going on. And what I found is that there is a massive neurochemical shift that actually works in our favor. And by that, I'm sure we'll get into it. By that, what I mean is that when we have this neurochemical shift, we get the opportunity to really look at parts of ourselves, at parts of our life that do not work anymore. And so when I actually went to go write the book, so much of the book actually has many of my personal stories in it. And I realized that there was a voice that was coming through me that I had never really given oxygen to. And the boldness in which I was willing to say things and the desire to really lift women up in midlife and beyond to be leaders. And I had to really honor that voice, because I'm really proud of this book. I'm really proud of women that are trying to make change, and I really just wanted to make sure that I recognized myself, not for anybody else but me, but that I was aware that there was a different voice that was coming out of me now.
And I think I've heard you talk about it, like you've said, this is like I was discovering who I was before the world told me who I was
Yeah,
supposed to be.
yeah,
And I thought that was
so good.
really
Yeah,
profound. And
yeah.
what I love and what I think makes this book actually really special is that you've gone beyond the science and medicine of aging and menopause, and you've brought in the anthropological, the cultural, like even the mystical. Why was that important to you?
Thank you for asking that. So, when I first started to understand the neurochemical changes, one of the questions I wanted to answer was, what is the purpose of menopause? And it may seem like a silly question, but it's not when you realize that women live 42.5%, if we're lucky, of our life post-reproductively. Like, we stay alive, but a whole organ system shuts down inside us. And what I know from all the research I've done is that the body doesn't do anything by mistake. So I, of course, went back to the evolutionary anthropological look because that's what I did with fasting. I was trying to understand why so many women couldn't lose weight. And then I was like, oh, wow, if you go back and look at anthropology and our evolutionary beginnings, it's because we have two metabolisms. And if you spark the fat burner metabolism with fasting, you can start to drop weight. And that was really all of Fast Like a Girl. So I did the same thing. I went back and I studied the grandmother hypothesis. I talked to a really potent or powerful American anthropologist named Kristen Hawkes that actually went and lived with a tribe in Africa that still practices the grandmother hypothesis. And I was like, okay, I think I see this through an evolutionary lens, but I wanted to see, okay, how can I map that to neuroscience? So then I went deep into Lisa Mosconi's work, who's the top female brain researcher in the world. And I wanted to understand, what is she seeing with the pruning of neurons that go away and the creating of new neurons? Why would the brain prune itself? I wanted to understand that. Then I dove into a sociological point of view, and I think this one is really important. I found a feminist psychologist here in America named Carol Gilligan that studied women back in the or girls back in the 1980s and found that our voice changed when we went through puberty and we started quieting our voice. We started succumbing to the pressures of a patriarchal society. And then I was like, I have to go to Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who has been leading women into transitions through her books forever. She wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, and she wrote a book called The Power of the Crone. And I started to dissect her mystical idea that women go through a life death life cycle where they have a life, they hit midlife, something in them dies, and they rebirth a new life. And I felt like if I could take these four lenses, that we could put a complete picture together of what's going on with us as we go through this massive hormonal transition. And I felt like it was too limiting to just stick with the anthropological or the neuroscience. I really wanted a wider lens.
It's beautiful because I've asked myself so many times, and anytime I speak to people, they're like, what is the reason for menopause?
Yeah.
And we're going to touch on some of these things individually, but can you tell everybody about the grandmother hypothesis?
Yeah, so the grandmother hypothesis is fascinating, and there are a lot of critics out there about it. What I wanted to highlight is what happened in the environment of this hunter-gatherer time when a woman's period stopped. And here's what the grandmother hypothesis says, is that they understood that when a woman wasn't menstruating, that energy was restored back to her. And that energy went to three places. And this is important because I don't think we think about how much energy it took to release an egg every month. But that energy was quite profound and it comes back to women. So all of a sudden, we started to see that women in their post reproductive years, through the lens of the grandmother hypothesis, had more fitness, they had more mental clarity, and they were more prone to social collaboration with each other. And the best way to understand this is in cave life, it was the men and probably the really, I've thought a lot about this, that I think it was probably also the strong teenagers, probably both girls and boys, that went out hunting every single day. And they would go out hunting for big animal kills. And they would only come back to the clan 3% of the time with an animal kill. So that's 1 day out of 30 that they came back with a big animal kill. The rest of the time, somebody had to feed the pregnant women and the little children. And so it was the grandmothers that would gather at the crack of dawn every single day and would go walk for 7 hours every single day to forage for food.
The
And what
gathering, the hunters and the
oh,
gatherers,
that's
right?
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like the gathering, and they basically found, and what the literature says is they really looked for tubers because that seemed to be accessible to them, and berries, and they would bring those back and they would feed it to the clan to keep them alive while the men and the stronger teenagers were off trying to make an animal kill. And in the lens of the grandmother hypothesis, what we see are evolutionary heroines, meaning women that kept the clan alive while the men waited to get a big animal kill. And that alone, and that alone is a fascinating idea because we don't lift our menopausal women up to that level of leadership in our culture. In fact, we have so many women that are so scared of aging that they're dyeing their hair and freezing their faces because God forbid somebody would think they were old because then they would become invisible. But the grandmother hypothesis says, no, actually, the grandmother was necessary to keep the clan alive because she has a new brain and a new energy source in order to go do that.
Oh my God.
And
I love
that alone, I was like, how do we change the societal lens of looking at aging for women?
And I think you see more of that in Eastern cultures. They do,
Probably.
as you transition, you become more
Yeah.
wise, and they
Yeah.
use that, they respect their elders a lot more. I think that in Western cultures, I don't know why that's gone away, but I think we can all deserve a little bit more of that female energy, I think,
Yeah.
right now.
For sure.
But I love this reframe that, the energy we used for reproduction, we now have given back to ourselves.
That's it.
And that's a beautiful reframe. And then you touched earlier on the social psychology or the female psychology. And I was reading or listening to you in another interview, and you gave the example of boys and girls. And because you were saying how girls and women eventually lose their voice. And you talk about when boys and girls were asked what they want for dinner. Can you tell that story?
Yeah. So I dove into Carol Gilligan's work, and she had a book called In a Different Voice. And what happened is that back in the 1980s, which I want to point out, that many of us that are going through menopause right now, that was us in I graduated high school in 1987 when she was studying girls. And what she found is if you ask a boy and a girl somewhere around the age of 9 what they want, they'll give you the exact thing that they want. And I use the example of food. She studied other things. I use food. So the boy would say, I want to eat this. And the girl would say, I want to eat this. And they would stand in their certainty. By 11, she noticed that if she asked that question, the boy would still tell you what he wanted, and the girl would hesitate for a moment and then tell you what she wanted. By 13, boy would still tell you what he wanted, but the girl would say, I don't know, what are you going to eat? And think about that. How many of us do that?
Oh, it's crazy. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I see her doing it, and I
Yeah.
see her friends doing it.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be so much more aware of it. And because that's like a little micro thing that you can do to start teaching her to trust her voice and find her
Yeah.
voice, even just around what do you want for dinner?
Yeah. Like, no, I wanna know what you want. You know, I think you bring up such a good point, and anybody listening that has teenagers, we need because this is still exists in this culture where women and this was the big aha that Carol brought forward, is that women were taught that you are worthy if you are selfless. So, if you are doing everything for everybody else, you're amazing. We love you. You're worthy. But the minute you start to try to do anything for yourself, you have become selfish and you're not loved by the culture.
So it sounds like the transition is moving away from doing for others
Yeah,
and towards doing for me.
that's right. Yeah. And that's why, and I just want like I don't want to lose this because this is such an important note that so many women resonate with, which is our whole life. I mean, goes back to why I gave I dedicated it to my authentic voice. Our whole life, we have wrapped ourselves up in a package that hopefully society will approve of us. Let me be the right weight. Let me have the right hair color. Let me wear the right clothes. Let me say the right thing. I don't want to rock the boat because if I do, I will be condemned by the people around me.
And I think this is a really hard thing though for women to transition into, isn't it?
Oh,
Because
so hard.
I think when they get here, it's scary if you look inside and you go, I don't know. Like it's back to like, what do you want for dinner? What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I don't know. Like, how do you help coach women through that?
Yeah, it's so again, back to writing this book became like therapy for me because I started to turn on myself and ask myself these questions. Somewhere in the middle of this book, I actually had my therapist say to me, "Well, Mindy, what your kids are grown. You're closed your clinic. You're writing books. You have freedom. You have time, more time than you've ever had. You have money. What do you want to do?" And I could not answer that question. I'm like, "What do you mean, what do I wanna do? Like, how do you wanna live day to day? What do you wanna do with your life?" And I kept saying, "Well, my husband is wanting to do this, our kids live over here, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna wanna move over there. My business needs me to do." And she's like, "No, no, 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 no. What do you wanna do?" And so for about a month, I walked around asking myself, what do I want to do? And for the first couple of weeks, nothing came to me because I had never trained my brain to think about myself outside of the context of my family, my business, society. So I think what really helped me is I started to every single moment in the day when I would make a decision on what I was eating, what I was wearing, what time I went to bed, the music I was like I just kept assessing, do I like this? Do I wear the clothes I want to wear? What time do I want to eat dinner? Like dinner's a big one because we always gather the family for dinner. I'm like, well, but maybe I want to eat dinner at a different time. What time do I want to go to bed? Like, I literally just went into this deep inquiry of everything in my life. I just kept saying, "What do I wanna do?" And if you do that long enough, you start to see yourself outside of the context of all of the identities you wear and the demands that the society has on you.
And I think it's a beautiful, very gentle exercise. I mean,
Very
you
gentle.
can just do it within yourself. It can be a conversation within yourself. Like you said, as you're making dinner, maybe you're making 2 dinners, one for the kids
Right.
and then one for and then you're like, "But where do I like, what time do
Yeah.
I wanna eat at?" Or,
Yeah.
"What time do I wanna go to bed?" I think that's a nice thing for everyone listening to just start asking themselves in those moments and start clocking it. Just start clocking it.
Start clocking it. And it's another thing that we do a lot. How many of us have been in a situation where we got invited out, like let's say on Friday night, and we get to Friday and we're like, I don't want to go out tonight with my friends, but I don't want to let them down. So I'm gonna push through and go out. That was the way that this inquiry started to become so much strength for me because I would hit a point where I'm like, yeah, I know we're supposed to go out with friends tonight. I just want to be in my sweats on the couch watching a show. Yeah, I know it's gonna disappoint them, but at this point of my life, I am more interested in not disappointing myself than disappointing others.
But it is
And
a
you
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you just it's a really fun inquiry, and you start to see yourself very differently, and I still catch moments where I'm like, "Oh god, I'm gonna disappoint this person, but I don't wanna do that activity."
And I think it's, the reason why it's scary sometimes too is I mean, you talk about this as well, like this liminal space. I was with
Yeah.
a friend this morning actually, and we work out together. And she was over the last few times we've been together, she's been saying, "Oh, I woke up at 2:30, and then oh, I woke up at 4:30, and I'm not sleeping well." Like she's been saying it a couple times. And we were talking today, and she said she was telling me everything that was, stuff that was happening with her husband and stuff that was happening with each of her kids, and then all this other stuff she had to do. And I said, can we just take a moment, figure out what's going on with you? Like
Yeah.
why do you think you're not sleeping? And anyway, where we got to was she was like, "Well, I'm kind of moving in." She's starting her own business. So she was like, "I'm kind of moving away from being, the stay-at-home mom into this other person and thing." And she was like, "I'm now trying to figure out how these two worlds come together."
It's beautiful.
So that
Yeah.
liminal space is really hard, right? As you work through it.
Yeah.
And it takes time. I mean, you said it yourself. I mean, there's a reason this journey takes 10 years.
Well said. Yeah. There's a there and that and when people hear, "Oh my god, perimenopause is gonna take 10 years. How am I gonna survive that?" If we reframe this as you are actually heading back to whatever version of you wanna create, she's waiting on the other side of that 10 years. She's over there waiting for you to become the person that you wanna be and do the things you wanna do, and if you look at this through the lens of neuroscience, the brain is literally rewiring itself so that you can finally live life the way you want to live it. So it takes 10 years to figure out what's working, what's not working. Because let's say we started our period at 13 and we go into perimenopause somewhere in our 40s. That's about 30 years where we played by the rules of everybody else. And so we haven't conditioned our brain to put ourselves first. So it's going to take 10 years for you to keep going into this inquiry. And like your friend, I think that's a really beautiful story because, yeah, how do you? I had to go through this too. Like, this is who I am now, but that means I can't be who I was.
Yeah. Or, who am I now if I'm not that person?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the whole story of becoming. And I know you talk about it like a really profound awakening. You started talking about the brain, and I want to jump there now because you describe three major, not just hormonal, but neurochemical shifts that
Yeah.
happen in a woman's life. So can you walk us through that hormonal and neural
Yeah.
journey?
Yeah. So this is why taking different lenses was so important because I started to see different patterns. And what happens is that there are 3 times in a woman's life where the brain rewires itself. And they're all built off of a massive change in hormones. So the first is puberty. And so the neurons in the brain that used kept a girl tethered to an adult to be able to live, those neurons go away because with a period comes the possibility of pregnancy. So the brain needs to change itself for more independence in case this you get pregnant. So it prepares itself for the next job at hand. Same thing with pregnancy. When you have a baby and those hormones drop, that signals the brain to let go of those neurons that told you where your keys were, that told you, kept a task list in your mind, that helped you understand what you were doing when you walked into the other room. You actually don't need those neurons as much. What you need are new neurons that make you highly intuitive because your baby doesn't speak, and so you have to learn how to read your baby's clues or cues. So your brain rewires itself to have this really intuitive experience with your child, which I just think is so
That
freaking
is so
cool.
super cool.
Right? Like mommy brain is real, but it's purposeful.
Yes.
You're not meant to understand where your keys are. You're meant to understand if your baby needs to eat or not.
And you're not
And that's
broken.
you're not broken. So the brain rewires itself so you can be the best mom you can possibly be. The third time, and this is the one that I just wasn't getting enough oxygen, is menopause. The brain, the neurons that kept you tethered to people pleasing, the neurons that put everybody else's need ahead of your own, those go away. Literally, those are sloughing off. And you're making room for more neurons that are going to propel you towards independence and leadership. This ties into the grandmother hypothesis. They needed leaders that would go forage for food. So the brain rewired itself so that the grandmother could work in community with other grandmothers and could have the cognition and the fitness to go find food to save the clan. Well, that leadership brain is still happening in us now, but we're not lifting women up. And that was such a huge part I wanted to bring forward is say, your brain is rewiring itself for leadership. So you get to decide, am I going to lead myself? Maybe you are a grandmother and you have a pivotal role in your family taking care of children. Maybe you're a member of the church and you're going to lead a different church group, or maybe you're in your communities, you're going to lead. I would say right now, we need a whole lot of feminine leadership in the world right now. And so maybe some women, when they go through this, will rise up and become leaders of a country or a county or a city. But we were born to be leaders through this process. And that is not the message that's getting out there.
No, and I think there's a whole industry built around keeping us in a certain box.
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
I think
thank
it's
you.
called anti-aging industry.
It's called yeah. Yeah, I put the line in my favorite line in the book. It just came out of my brain is that we are so scared of aging that we had to put the word anti in front of it. And then we had to create a whole commercialization around making sure that you're buying beauty products and buying biohacks and buying into this idea that aging is bad.
But there's this whole idea around going inside and pulling out this powerful person
Yeah.
that has been in there, I think, all the time. But society
Exactly.
or culture has kind of told us, you know, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that. And so I love this reframe of it and how empowering it can be for women. And so let's talk about these neurochemicals a little bit more, because you're right. We haven't talked about that too much on this show either. And you have a lovely phrase. You talk about your girl gang.
Yeah.
So talk us through a little bit more about these neurochemicals, what they do in our brain, and when they go missing, how can we refuel with them?
Yeah. So in my 10-year research on this, I came across a study that showed that estrogen didn't act alone. She had a whole slew of neurochemicals that she brought with her. And they are chemicals we all love. Dopamine that keeps us motivated, serotonin that keeps us happy, acetylcholine that keeps our memory working right, GABA that calms us, glutamate that gives us focus, oxytocin that helps us connect, and BDNF that really helps our brain hold on to new information. Estrogen even had a relationship with melatonin that helped us sleep, with insulin that kept our weight off, with creatine and collagen that kept our muscles. I mean, she was a diva of hormones. Like she doesn't, like I feel like we need to give her a retirement party when we go and be like, thank you, estrogen. You have done a lot for us.
Yeah, for sure.
So I called it the girl gang because the way I look at it is we've all gone through that experience in high school where there's the popular girl table where one popular girl is sitting with her gang of other girls. And when the popular girl decides to get up and leave the table, all the other girls follow her. We've witnessed that in movies. We may have witnessed that ourselves. That's how I see estrogen is she had all these neurochemicals that she stimulated every month. When she came in, she gave you motivation, she gave you connection, she gave you cognition, and she did it by stimulating all these other neurochemicals. And now estrogen is out. She is declining.
She's
And
tapped
so
out.
she's like, done, peace out. I've done a lot here. And so these neurochemicals are left in jeopardy. And so this is why we see women's motivation go down. We don't want to connect in the same way. We can't hold on to information. We're gaining weight. We can't calm ourselves because these neurochemicals, their leader is gone. So it's our job now with our lifestyle to bring them back. So my favorite one that I use is acetylcholine. Everybody has that parent. For me, it's my 86-year-old mom who will tell the same story over and over and over again. And she will tell it with so much enthusiasm, like we've never heard it before.
Love
And
her.
right? How many of us are like, Mom, you've told us that story before. But if
Guilty.
you, yeah, right? I've been like mad at my mom before. Like, of course we know that story. You've told it for 20 years now. But then I realized what she was doing is actually dipping into her hippocampus, the part of the brain that is memory, and encouraging her brain to make this powerful neurotransmitter called acetylcholine so that she could keep her memory sharp. She was intuitively doing this through storytelling. And the minute I made that connection, you know what I do with her now? I'm like, yeah, you've told me that, but you know what? The part of the story you didn't tell me was X, Y, and Z. Tell me a little more about that. Because what I know is we're exercising her brain. We're forcing her brain to make acetylcholine so her brain stays sharp. That was a massive reframe for me on a very annoying situation with my mom. It gave me a new lens in which to speak to her from.
I mean, that is just going to change the dynamic between me and my mom as well.
Right?
Totally. I think, again, like most things, when you understand and you have a greater understanding, then you know what you can do about it.
Right.
So that's one example. And I know you give a few other tips on how you can help, like, I don't know, fuel or build more of these I'm going to say neurotransmitters, or are they the neurochemicals? Like,
Neurotransmitters. Yeah.
okay. So like, what are some, like, we love these good hormones, right? Like we want more
Yeah, we want 'em
oxytocin.
back.
We want a lot of dopamine. We want all that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things we can do to help kind of fuel that in us?
Yeah, so this was the most fun part of the book to write, was part 2, where I just laid all the neurochemicals out and I was like, here's what you can do. So dopamine loves novelty. So we hit midlife and we're hanging out with the same people, we're watching the same news channels, we're driving the same way to the grocery store. Everything is same, same, same. And all of a sudden we start to go into depression. So if you are somewhere along the menopausal journey, or even on the other side of the menopausal journey, you got to mix things up. You got to, and it can be as simple as change the furniture in your house. I told my parents, my dad's 89, my mom's 86. They're a little blue right now. They're a little bored. And I was like, you need to change your living room. Mom, you love decorating. Just change the living room, change the whole inside of it. And then you'll be sitting in the living room and it will feel new. And they will bring dopamine back into their life.
So that's good. So I feel like sometimes I change my route when I go for walks. Like I don't do the same, like, so even just changing up your walk to work or your walk to school, the school run or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so simple. And you might have to do it 3 or 4 different ways. But this is something that we're not bringing forward, is you can make your own dopamine by having a new experience. So if I take a different route to the gym, I'm like, oh, I didn't see that store. I didn't know that was there. Oh, wait, this is interesting. That tree over there. Like, you start to see things new and that sparks dopamine in you.
All right. I love that. What about serotonin? How do we make some serotonin?
Yeah, so serotonin's my other favorite one, because you're so brilliantly designed that you have serotonin receptor sites in your eyes, meaning that if you go outside in the middle of the day, and I know it's cloudy there often in the UK.
Use your red light.
Yeah, exactly. But but even through the clouds, you can get it. But if you go outside in the middle of the day and get full spectrum light, your eyes turn that light into serotonin. So you can actually make your own serotonin. Think about it. How many of us have gone on vacation and maybe we sit on a beach and we're like, oh, the sun feels so good. It's like makes us relaxed. We're looking out at the ocean and we're feeling a sense of calm. And all of a sudden we feel kind of yummy. We feel good. Well, that's because your eyes took the sunlight and turned it into serotonin. So, can you go out maybe for a 20-minute walk, sit in your backyard every midday and just get yourself a good dose of serotonin? This is free. Your body already knows how to make it. Let's go back to the grandmother hypothesis. I'm sure that was built into our evolutionary biology so that as these grandmothers were walking during the day, they were getting serotonin, keeping them happy. Every single day they went walking, they probably went on a new trek. They probably had new experiences. So they were getting dopamine every single day. They were doing it in conjunction with other women and in collaboration. So they were getting oxytocin every single day. There's stories in there where about the grandmother hypothesis where they would come back and they would share stories of their childhood with the younger children. They were getting acetylcholine every single day. Like, it's not hard to get these neurotransmitters, you just have to be intentional about it.
Yeah, and if like you said, they're free.
They're
And
free.
I think they also, from the way you were talking, it sounds like they feed off of each other, right? Like once you
Yeah,
get more motivation, then you want to go outside, then you'll get more sunlight. They kind of build upon each other as well,
yeah,
which, if
yeah.
somebody's feeling really overwhelmed, if they're like, oh my God, I gotta like look up at the sky. And then I got like, just like, well, just go for a walk. And maybe that's the first thing to
Yeah,
do.
the just last week, I had a day where I was just feeling really blue, and so I called a friend and I was like, "Can we go hike?" And literally this is what went through my brain. I was like, "Can we go to a new hike? Let's go on a new path, because then I would get dopamine. Can we do it in the middle of the day so I can get serotonin?" And I wanted to do it with my friend because I know I get oxytocin with her. So all of a sudden, a workout became a neurochemical uplift that was really helpful. And I came home and I was like, from that hour walk, and I was a different human.
Oh my God, I love this idea of a neurochemical high.
Yeah, you control it. You
Yeah.
control it.
Yeah, I love this idea. And those are all easy things that everybody I think can manage. And I learned from your book as well, oxytocin, which I know you get from being with others, but it's really powerful. I didn't know it had a
Super
greater
powerful.
impact in your body than just this idea of like feeling love towards people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is something we all might be able to relate to, which is we sort of feel like that nurturing, motherly sort of feeling we get as your kids grow up. It's sort of, and you move into this transition. Sometimes you can feel less of that, and a lot of that is because oxytocin goes down. I think marriages fall apart because oxytocin goes down when we go through menopause. But oxytocin is the most fun to bring back because you can get it in your girl time. Like I can tell you, my girlfriends and I prioritize our friendship more than ever now because it's an oxytocin boost. But you can get it with just time alone with yourself. Get to know yourself and be in the calm and the quiet and listen to your inner voice. You can get it by you get oxytocin by I put in there a really cool research I'd done on your environment and how where you live actually will determine neurotransmitters that are made. And one of the things oxytocin loves is a clean room, a clean, spacious room. And so you walk into a room that's clean and spacious, and you're getting oxytocin in that state of observing. I mean, think about it. How many of us have walked into the after maybe the cleaners came and you're like, oh, it feels so much. That's oxytocin because the environment is clean and clutter free.
Oh my God, I'm laughing because I'm thinking, okay, oxytocin is got to be my best friend.
Oh yeah, it's all our best friends.
I want to pause right there. While that's sinking in, let's take a quick break to hear from our amazing partners who help bring you this show for free.
I got a good feeling.
Quick favor before we start. I know every podcast asks you to do this, but could you please hit follow and rate the show? It really does make a big difference. Now, back to the show. Okay, now I can't talk to you without asking about fasting.
Yeah, of course.
And I
Everybody
think
says that.
and
That's
I
great.
think obviously, it's highly contested, so many different ways to look at it. There's so much nuance, I think, in it that people don't really understand. But
Yep.
when does fasting become supportive in midlife and when does it
Mhm.
become a stressor?
Oh, I love the way you phrased that question because there's been a lot of rhetoric right now that menopausal women shouldn't fast. And I believe 180-degree opposite of that. And you're talking to a woman who's watched millions of women fast through this menopause experience and done so much research on it. And so, what we need to understand is that the menopausal brain as it goes through this process is craving ketones. And the best way to get ketones is starting to learn how to fast. And I'm not talking long fasts. I'm talking like 13 to 15 hours every single day, an intermittent fast. Give your brain a dose of ketones.
And what is a ketone, just for everybody
Yeah.
listening?
So a ketone is a protein molecule that will actually is a fuel source for your cells and it's a fuel source for your brain as much as a glucose molecule is. And the best way I can explain this is we have two energy systems. One that we ignite when we eat and we turn our food into glucose, and glucose goes up into the brain and gives it some fuel so it can be energized. The other fuel source is when we don't eat. When you go at least, I use it about 8 hours, is what the literature says. 8 hours without eating, and your body will start to move into a different energy system called the ketogenic energy system. And that length of time starts to trigger the liver to burn fat. This is how miraculous ketones are to burn fat to make a ketone, to give the ketone up to the brain so the brain stays energized in the absence of glucose coming in. So, but what happens to us as estrogen goes away is the brain becomes less efficient at using glucose. So that meal that energized you at 40 actually gives you brain fog at 50
Wow.
because maybe it had too much glucose in it. So we've got to rely and get to know this other fuel source, this ketone, which means short periods of fasting. You can go longer if you want, but 13 to 15 hours every day. And you are giving your brain this really necessary fuel source. And in that process, you're burning fat. So you burn fat to make a ketone. Like it's a win-win. I don't see, and I actually learned that you'll love this. I learned this just 2 weeks ago from a neurosurgeon who was interviewing me on her podcast. She said, there's talk about these neurons that prune away and the loss of both gray and white matter in a woman's brain. But what most people don't know is that when these neurons prune away, they actually give off a metabolite that is a form of a ketone. So the brain will prune itself, and the byproduct is the astrocytes in our brain will actually make ketones to give the brain the preferred fuel source. So, what is happening is when we look at Alzheimer's and dementia, we're still talking about, okay, well, maybe eat this way, eat that way. And I'm saying, no, start to tack on these little fasting windows so that you can give your brain a different fuel source, the fuel source that it is demanding from you now. You could give me the most brain fogged menopausal woman. Let me show her how to fast. And in 3 days, her brain is back on track because of the power of a ketone.
And there is, like you said, there's kind of that 8-hour fast when you're going to sleep, like kind of that's
Yeah.
bedtime. So why sleep is also important. And then what are the buildups from there? There's like a 17-hour, 24-hour.
Yeah. So at 8 hours, you'll metabolically switch over into the ketogenic system. It doesn't mean you'll make ketones at that point, but your smart body goes, oh, okay, we need to go to the other fuel source now. Usually for most people, by 12 hours without food, they are deep into a ketogenic state. Like they're burning fat and making ketones. So by 15 hours, they have usually with ketones comes GABA, by the way, it comes dopamine, all the girl gang comes with a ketone. So usually by 15 hours, the hunger's gone, the happiness is going up. If you train yourself. So if people are listening to this and they're like, oh, I tried that, that wasn't my experience. If you train yourself, I promise you it will be your experience. It's like trying to run a marathon and running 2 miles and saying, oh, no, I can't run a marathon. You have to train yourself to run a marathon. You have to train yourself to go into these deeper states. 17 hours, the brain starts to clear the toxins. It starts to get rid of the junk up there that isn't needed anymore. It's a state called autophagy. 24 hours, the gut starts to repair itself. 48 hours, the whole dopamine system resets. 72 hours, the immune system resets. So when we learn to use fasting as a tool and we start to bring out these different length fasts, you start to have a very different experience with your body because your body is way smarter than we give it credit for.
And I think if anybody is interested in this, I mean, your book, Fast Like a Girl,
Yeah.
like starts coaching you through this. I know you even have, I think, twice a year, do you do a water?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we just did it. It's so fun. We do January and February and September. We lead 100,000 people through water fasting.
I'm
And
so sad I missed the January one, like right after the holidays.
yeah,
I might try to join you and like learn. I'm going to start learning more about it, especially. I have a thyroid issue though. I have Hashimoto's. Is there any person who shouldn't be fasting, or is that anything I should be concerned about?
yeah. So it's so funny. I just did a YouTube video on a new study that's showing that actually on an intermittent fast, the thyroid protects itself by making more T3, so that it can actually make sure that it preserves itself. It's really fascinating. So intermittent fasting and thyroid go really hand in hand. People with thyroid problems, one of the biggest challenges that we have with fasting, and this is going to sound like too good to be true, is that you stop being hungry. It's like it's nature's Ozempic. Like, I don't understand why the weight loss drugs are killing it. I could teach you how to kill hunger through building a fasting lifestyle. So the biggest challenge we have with thyroid is that you need at least 1,200 calories a day for your thyroid to function normally. And so if you're fasting and you're not hungry, you're going to need to make sure that you eat a lot of protein, get those 1,200 calories in there to keep the thyroid long term nourished.
And that's
So
another good reason why to make sure you're doing this properly and not just.
that's right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I tried this once because my husband was doing the fast because we had a friend who's has studied it a lot and is really great at it. And I mean, I didn't last. I think I lasted 36 hours, which I think was
That's a
good.
lot. That's amazing.
But it was literally cold turkey. Like I kind of just, yeah. Anyway, it was good, but then like I couldn't get out of bed.
right.
So
Right.
I wasn't doing something properly. So I have to go back
Yeah.
and I have to look at it and doing it properly. Now, you also tell a story in your book about, communicating with your partner or communicating with your family about what you're going through. And
Yeah.
I think your husband asked you a question one night over dinner that said, like, tell me, what are you discovering about yourself?
Yeah.
Was it something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, one of the things that happened to me, and I'm really trying to prevent this for other women, is that I kept adapting and adapting to everybody else's needs that I finally just broke. And I could not be around anybody. I had to like recenter myself. So, when I wrote this book, I actually wrote it in isolation. I found an Airbnb here in Santa Cruz where I live now. I lived by myself. And I got to know myself, and I was under a therapy and guidance, and I wrote the book. But you can imagine in a 30-year marriage how that landed, where I needed to isolate myself. And so he kept, was concerned, is the marriage over? What's happening? And I was like, I don't know, but I need to go find myself outside of the noise of everybody else. And he finally caught on and understood. And so this one night we were together, he said to me, "Can you tell me who you're becoming? Like what is it you're discovering about yourself?" And it was the most helpful conversation. And one of the first things I said to him is, I realized from my childhood that I'm a professional codependent woman, that I want to make sure you feel well, the kids feel well, everybody's doing okay in order for me to be happy. And what I'm doing now is the opposite. I need to make me happy and to let go of if you all are happy because your happiness is your responsibility and my happiness is my responsibility. So there are going to be things that I just can't do for you all anymore because I need to put myself first. It was a beautiful conversation we had that helped him understand that I was going through a transition.
And I think it was a beautiful thing for him to say to show that I'm here on the journey with you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm here waiting for you when you come out the
Yeah.
other side.
Yeah, and this is why I put, an appendix to men. It actually came from my own, personal experience with my husband, and when I wrote the appendix to men, it was coming from a place where I was really helping my husband understand what was going through me, and I think it can bring couples closer together if they're willing, if the spouse is willing to sit and understand that this is meant to be a metamorphosis. I had a really interesting podcast interview with a man who said to me, when I put you on my schedule, I realized I knew nothing about menopause. And then I realized actually, I witnessed my mom, who was a single mom, go through a major shift. And what that shift looked like was she stopped doing everything for all of us. And my brother was really upset because she wasn't doing what she normally did for us. And I was like, she gave her life to us and put us first for so many years. She deserves to do life her way. That's the cultural acceptance we all need to have. We as women have done everything for everybody else, and menopause is our moment to start doing it for ourselves. But that's going to break marriages apart. That's going to be tough on careers. Adult children are going to have to rethink the way they look at us. But that's okay if we keep the conversation open. I could have closed my marriage conversation by saying, "You don't understand me. You don't get what I'm going through." But I stayed in there and tried to explain what was happening to me, and it's brought my marriage to the best place it's ever been in 30 years.
Well, congratulations on that. I mean, I
Thank you.
think that's something everybody should, even for that chapter, I think would be a great thing. Now, Dr. Mindy, the final question we ask all of our guests. Knowing what we know now about the menopause transition, what would you tell our 35-year-old listener?
Yeah, so at 35, the most important metric that you get in shape is hemoglobin A1C. That is an indicator of your metabolic health. If you go into your 40s and into those perimenopausal years with a healthy metabolic system, I promise you, I have watched this with millions of women, you will have a smoother ride with menopause. So your doctor is doing A1C every single time you get a blood test. I guarantee it. You want that to be as close to 5 as possible. Just make it easy for the 35-year-old. Like, we're just focusing on that.
That is a great tip. What would you tell our 45-year-old listener?
Yeah, so 45, this is where I would say your nervous system really matters. You're at a phase of menopause where your adrenals are being asked to make certain sex hormones because your ovaries are done making those sex hormones. It's like a hormonal handoff to the adrenal glands. If your adrenals are completely tanked because you've been living such a stressed life and a fast paced stressed life, you will struggle to make an appropriate amount of hormones. So start to understand what you can do to bring your stress load down. Start to prioritize time for yourself. One thing I did at 45 that I didn't even realize I was innately doing is I made sure that every Friday afternoon and Friday evening and every Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening, I had nothing on my calendar because I realized that I needed to recover from the end of the week and I needed to gain my energy back and just relax. And Sunday, I needed to prepare for the week. So I started building in downtime. And it was really helpful because people would say, "Oh, do you want to go out on Friday?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't go out on Friday nights anymore."
I
Like
love that.
that's
I've
my
just
night for
started
me.
I've just started blocking my diary for like rest and restore as well.
Yeah.
I've just started that. So, okay,
Yep.
that's great to know. And what would you tell our 55-year-old listener?
Yeah, you're at the moment. Like, please listen to your inner voice. She has probably been whispering to you for years, and she's probably now screaming at you. So if you're at 55 and you're still feeling some depression, a really good question to ask is what is not working anymore in your life that you need to let go of? If you're feeling anxiety at 55, what is it in your future you're worried about? And how do we start to create a future that you're excited about? If you feel disconnected and lonely, how do you connect back to yourself and the people that matter to you? Like in my early, I'm 56, and I really curated an amazing friend group. And I'm very, very picky about who I invite into my friend group because I see them as a priority for me. I see them as oxytocin for me. So take that part two of Age Like a Girl and start to apply the principles I teach in there of how you can bring these neurochemicals back in. Because if you hit 55 and you're not like, woohoo, I'm doing great, then there's some work for you, some inquiry for you to do.
Dr. Mindy Pelz, thank you so much for bringing like your energy and all your
Thank you.
time and being part of the MenoPositive community. I have learned so much today. I think the idea that your brain is rewiring itself, how I can create more of these feel-good hormones.
Yep.
That's one of my favorites. And ketones. Ketones
Yes.
are going to be my new thing, my new fuel for my
Yes.
menopausal brain. But I love your energy. I love your spirit. Thank you for sharing all this with us today. And I hope I'm going to see you smiling back at me at a Sanctum class one day soon.
Yeah. Oh my God. Let's do it. Let's do it. We have to do a class together.
I would absolutely love that. I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much. And if you're listening and feel called to share your journey with us or your favorite bits from today, please rate and review this episode and join the conversation on Instagram at menopositive.life. It really does make a big difference. See you next time.
I got a good feeling.